Hi everyone. Thank you for being here. I am a historian, and as you can imagine, people from humanities are differently, they did have like problems with the technology. So my presentation, there is no presentation as such. अभी जरा ठहरिएगा, मैं इसको जब कहूँगा फिर आप स्टार्ट कीजिएगा कि इतनी ना elaborate presentation है, ना इसमें कोई खास कोई डेटा है. It's just about a couple of projects that we did in collaboration with Dr. Suleiman Shahid a few years ago. It was part of a course which I was teaching. It was called Walking in the City, and we were working with our students to look at different aspects of Lahore's cultural and political history. And the idea was that students would go out in the field to the archives, collect data, historical data, and then we wanted to curate it in a way that it would be that'll be more presentable and that accessible to a larger audience as well, right? So in that sense, our motivation was that there is an appetite for history, for art, for culture, for heritage. People are looking for that kind of content, and they consume a certain kind of a content on YouTube, let's say. And also from a pedagogical perspective, this kind of if you make available this kind of data, it's a very good effective pedagogical tool, something which is, as we know from the kind of work that Khan Academy, for instance, is doing for high school students and for undergrad students. Right. So as part of this project, this is all what our students they collected. This is all available on our website, archive.lums.edu.pk. You can go and check it out. So I'm just giving you example from one of our projects. There were like 5 different themes on which they were working, and one of the projects was, you can start के लाहौर में 1920s में 2 बड़े इवेंट्स हुए, which was के एक तो इल्मदीन ने जो कत्ल किया राजपाल का, and the other one was भगत सिंह ने जो कत्ल किया एक ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर का. So our students collected all this data from the archives. And for us, then the idea was that we use that archival material and present it in a visually kind of like attractive form, so that it is not just a description, but it's also based on like newspaper reports, archival material, court documents, witness reports. And if you really zoom in, you will see like we produced Ilm Deen's original statement, the kind of evidence which was collected by the police from the spot, including like the dagger with which he stabbed Rajpal, and so on and so forth, right? So it really is about not just collection of data or information or material, but also like presenting it in a manner that can enhance our understanding, generally speaking. Now, what we believe is that the way the way technology is being used for teaching humanities is primarily, at least in Pakistan's case, is limited to digitization projects, like massive digitization projects which are being carried out. You go to any public sector university or library or an archive, they've all purchased very expensive machines, and all they do is just scan. Now, scanning is important, digitization in that sense is important, but curation is much more important. Like, what do you do with what you have scanned? It's just like, without any cataloging, without any sort of like purpose to that data, it's like a digital heap of sorts, right? So this is where I think it's important that there should be more of such collaboration and conversations between historians, let's say, and people from tech, because this is where we want to move forward in future, especially here at LUMS, where we're thinking about the possibility of setting up, let's say, a LUMS digital digital humanities lab, right? So like there are digital humanities lab elsewhere, and this is where we all come together and we work on such projects. There's another project, we don't have it here, इस पर मैं आता हूँ अभी. वो हमारी वेबसाइट पर है, उसको जरूर जाकर आप चेक कीजिएगा. It's a work in progress, and I think that will give you an idea about why and how this collaboration can work. So what we have done is, or we're trying to do, is that we have massive data on partition violence, right? So that, as you know, at the time of partition in 1947, um, thousands of women and children were abducted, and so we have extensive lists of where these incidents of violence and abductions took place, right? So if we can even further um, increase the scope of the project to include incidents of looting and murder and arson, and that requires looking into police reports, FIRs, all of that. That could also be done. तो अब उसमें करना क्या? उसमें हम जो करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, जो कि ज़ाहिर है कि technologically challenged historians can do themselves, is to create a visual map. Like you have that we have reports के फलां डिस्ट्रिक्ट के फलां गांव से इतनी औरतें अगवा हुई, या यहाँ पर इतने लोग कत्ल हुए, या इतनी दुकानें लूटी गईं, and we map or we sort of like plot all of this information onto that map. And once you have like a more extensive data and you accumulate that data, it turns out that you can see some connections. So it's not just about visualization. It is going to help tremendously with our analysis, because there has to be an explanation as to why in some areas there were more incidents of violence and abduction as compared to others, right? So based on what we have right now, it's a fairly basic kind of like mapping that we have done. It's clear that violence was more pronounced in Patiala, for instance, and there is already kind of like a historical explanation available for that, because Patiala was a princely state and it had a more organized army, so the pattern of violence in case of Patiala was more widespread as compared to others. But there has to be a reason as to why in some places such incidents did not take place. Perhaps it has to do with whether that particular district or that particular village was attached to a market, was close to a railway line, it had a prehistory of communal tensions and violence. It can only happen. So this analysis can only happen once we have that extensive data mapped onto these maps that we want to develop. And this is purely a project of digital humanities, where historians have to sit together and work with people who have necessary technological skills. Okay. And there are various examples of how this has been done in other parts of the world, especially with regard to Holocaust studies, right? So there are massive projects where one such project is about documenting and listing the names of every single person who was killed during the Holocaust. And the idea is that eventually the the project is to document the names of all the 6 million people who were killed during the Holocaust. I mean, so imagine like how massive this project would be. And so like doing similar projects for, let's say, partition violence is going to be of incredible historical and political importance. Now, lastly, ये हमने एक ऐप बनाई थी, एंड्रॉयड ऐप थी, again with Dr. Suleiman Shahid's help and supervision. And again, the idea was that we wanted people to be able to access the walled city on their own. So what our students did, they were assigned, they were made into different groups, and each group was assigned a particular gate, Bochi Gate, Lahori Gate, Bhati Gate, वगैरह. And they were asked to read up on these different gates. कि हमने उनको वो classical text assign कर दिए कि आप जाकर पढ़िए लोहारी गेट के ऊपर, उसमें कौन कौन सी इमारतें हैं, मंदिर हैं, हवेलियां हैं, गुरुद्वारे हैं, श्राइन्स हैं. और उसमें फिर आप ये जाएंगे इस ऐप में, तो उसके अंदर ये सारी की सारी जो लिस्ट्स हैं, मस्जिद की, मंदिर की, चौक की, वो सारी उसके अंदर वो आ जाती हैं. आप इसी एक पर इस पे क्लिक कीजिए, तो वो उसमें आपको ज़्यादा डिटेल्ड वो इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल जाएगी, उसकी हिस्टोरिकल इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल जाएगी. आप जब इसको नेविगेट करने के लिए जाते हैं, इसको मैप पर जाते हैं, तो वो मैप पर आपको उसकी जो प्रिसाइज लोकेशन है वो बता देता है। इसमें हमने जो बिल्कुल प्रिसाइज़ लोकेशंस जो जीपीएस कोऑर्डिनेट्स के ज़रिए वो हमने मेंशन कर दी थी। एंड दिस इज़ हाउ इट सॉर्ट ऑफ लाइक प्रोवाइड्स यू विद अ वॉकिंग ट्रेल कि अगर आपने वॉल्ड सिटी में खुद से जाकर इसको एक्सप्लोर करना है, तो वो आप कर सकते हैं। And this is we did for all our the 12 gates of Lahore. And but अब इसमें जो challenges हैं, now these are mostly places which I we do not think that most people, most Lahoris even they know about, right? And even if they do, it is incredibly difficult for them to venture into the walled city and access them directly. So at least what we have been able to do is to provide historical data and precise location of these places. But here's the challenge. The challenge is that कि वॉल्ड सिटी में आप जाएं और इस मैप के साथ जाएं, but it becomes difficult to use the app because internet connectivity is low, राइट? सो अब इसके क्या, अब इसकी जो जो इस चैलेंज को ओवरकम करने के लिए या तो ये है कि आप गवर्नमेंट के साथ मिलकर काम कीजिए, वर्ल्ड सिटी अथॉरिटी वगैरह के वो और यू कम अप विद योर ओन मैप्स, व्हिच इज आई डू नॉट थिंक इट्स टू शुड नॉट बी टू डिफिकल्ट, आई प्रिज्यूम शुड नॉट बी टू डिफिकल्ट ऑफ अ टास्क कि इसी डेटा को लेकर अगर हम अपने अपने मैप्स बनाएं, और उससे ताकि लोग जो हैं इस ऐप को ज़्यादा आसानी से इस्तेमाल कर सकें। आई मीन थिंक ऑफ इट इन टर्म्स ऑफ फॉर एटलीस्ट फॉर दिस ऐप, पिछले प्रोजेक्ट्स में जिस तरह मैं कह रहा था कि उनकी हिस्टोरिकल पॉलिटिकल इंपॉर्टेंस बहुत ज़्यादा है, लेकिन फॉर दिस ऐप आई थिंक इट हैज़ अ ह्यूज कमर्शियल एस्पेक्ट अटैच्ड टू इट एज वेल। कि अगर इसमें कॉर्पोरेट्स या कंपनीज ये चाहती हैं कि वो स्पॉन्सर करना चाहती हैं और उनके ज़रिए भी इस ऐप को इम्प्रूव किया जा सकता है, या ओवरऑल जो एक टूरिस्ट ट्रैफिक है which has increased tremendously over the past 2-3 years. There's so many walking tours being organized over. If you go to Instagram, you'll find those pages. People are interested. They want to explore history. They want to connect with their heritage, and so it has a viable commercial aspect attached to it as well, right? So these are some of the sort of like projects that we work on, and where we think there is a possibility of a collaboration between historians, artists, and computer scientists, engineers, and that these projects have their huge prospect, but they have huge challenges as well, which we need to overcome. Thank you.